This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Some old acquaintances are best forgotten, and that includes news stories. Nevertheless, we bring them to mind each December, the good and the bad, with hopes of doing even better in the new year. We'll be looking at some of the year's top stories in business and politics and crime. Plus, we will take a special look at the seat of Jefferson Parish, Gretna, and some of the issues that are shaping its future. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Missy Wilkinson, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, Rich Collins, associate news editor, Biz New Orleans Magazine, and Blake Paterson, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. We're going to go on over to Rich first, because there was really a lot of business news this past year. And you compiled a list of some of the big stories, and that's what we'll talk about.
It's that list time of year.
It is.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Same to you.
So, yes, we have the 10 biggest business stories of the year, and coming in at number 10 is what's going to happen at Avondale.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, that definitely is a big one. What is going to happen at Avondale?
Good question. It was about a year ago that it was last January the news broke that the owner of Avondale Global Gateway, a maritime company called Host, had plans to sell it to the Port of South Louisiana for $445 million. Bunch of controversy immediately followed. People thought the price was too high. Maybe the facility itself was outdated. Many months of wrangling and PR work and everything happened. They ended up changing the price to $330 million. But this fall, when they went to see the Louisiana Bond Commission to see if they can get the money, they could tell it wasn't going to go. It wasn't looking good. So the port said, we're just going to put this on hold. But so at Avondale, Host runs a logistics hub. They do have goods coming and going. I did a tour of it a few months ago. They've got aluminum and plywood and all sorts of stuff coming and going, so it's functioning.
There's a lot of interest in that site because it's just an amazing site. It really is.
Road, river, rail.
Yeah, really good. Okay, number 9.
Number 9, Entergy's Operation Gridiron. So we got hammered by those 4 storms. Obviously, we all saw when the infrastructure didn't do as well as it could. We had the transmission tower in the Mississippi River. So Entergy's trying to take a cue from Florida and harden the grid. They presented their case. It's a $1 billion price tag. They said, hey, New Orleans City Council, can our customers pay for it? That's where we are right now. City Council says that's not going to happen. You got to get creative, find ways to pay for this.
So that's Entergy New Orleans you're talking about.
Entergy New Orleans, right.
Yeah, and then Entergy Louisiana, customers are going to see a rate hike, are they, to harden that grid?
Well, the Entergy New Orleans customers will pay for the New Orleans grid improvements if this happens the way it should. But Entergy Louisiana, another related story, is selling its gas distribution business.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go. Moving on along, so we got them all covered.
Okay, saltwater wedge, not to be confused with the wedge salad.
Yeah.
Saltwater wedge is it's basically saltwater intruding up the Mississippi River. The bed of the Mississippi River is below sea level. So the only thing that keeps the saltwater from coming up is this powerful flow of the river. Unfortunately, all the dredging we've done to support the bigger ships has made it more of a problem. Saltwater during this drought and extreme heat had started to creep up. We thought we were in trouble. We were spared because if it hit the municipal water system, you get the saltwater in the lead pipes. The lead pipes become potentially very toxic.
Right.
And everyone's
but as you say, a wake-up call because it really made us realize this could happen.
Yeah, we needed another existential crisis,
right.
I think.
Yeah.
That's all we needed.
We need to think about solutions to that problem. Yeah. Okay, number 7.
Number 7, this is a fun one. This is just anyone who plays with the train set's happy. There's 2 big railroad announcements this fall. Since Katrina, we haven't had east-west service between New Orleans and Mobile because the rails were repaired after Katrina, but the freight railroads that own the lines didn't want to deal with Amtrak and passenger rail. So a bunch of politickings happened, and the Biden administration said, how about we give you almost $200 million to make it happen. As soon as next year, we're going to have twice daily service between New Orleans and Mobile.
That's exciting. All right.
There's a potential north-south to Baton Rouge. I think that's further off.
Yeah, that continues to be hung up a little bit.
2005 they're talking about for that. So.
Yeah,
Really,
we'll
that's
see.
true. Okay, number 6.
Number 6 is offshore wind. We're starting. People have been trying to make it happen. GNO Inc. and John Bell Edwards, all the people trying to build the economy, hoping to get more offshore wind activity. The first tiny baby step was they had the first offshore wind lease of federal waters this year, and a German company, RWE. $5 million, they bought some water to potentially have some wind generation out there. It was a tiny bid. Nobody else, I think one other company bid. We'll see how it goes,
Right.
but it's the beginning.
Yeah, it is the beginning, and we'll see if other action develops out there.
Yeah, the
in
dream is
Gulf.
to take our existing oil and gas infrastructure and use it to build this new energy business.
Yeah. All righty, next.
Next, let's see.
Number 5.
Oh, number 5. Okay. LCMC, Ochsner Expansion Consolidation Competition. So LCMC finally completed its purchase of the 3 Tulane owned hospitals. So that leaves us with a duopoly. You've got LCMC and Ochsner as the 2 big health systems in town. LCMC has 9 hospitals locally right now, although I think Tulane Hospital downtown is going to get converted to a teaching center, and a lot of its functions are going to move out to EJ. But so LCMC's got a huge presence in our market. Ochsner, meanwhile, is still, by many accounts, the largest private employer in the state, and I think it has close to 50 hospitals in the region. But these two, Ochsner also, as Errol knows, they've got the MD Anderson cancer facility now, and then the Benson's Gail Benson just announced the Benson Children's Hospital.
Oh, yeah, new pediatric facility.
Ochsner moving into the children's business sounds like fighting words to me.
I get a lot of press releases at work, and it's all about who's got the the preeminent children's hospital.
And the LCMC merger, that survived a legal concern.
Yeah, it was interesting because the feds wanted to shut it down for competition reasons, and then Jeff Landry, as Attorney General, sided with the LCMC folks and said that the state has the right to approve it, and that they prevailed.
And so it went forth. Okay, all right. Next on your list, number 4.
I'll leave a lot of this to Errol when he's covering it, but we covered the fact that this was a massive year for Republicans. Yeah. Landry's, winning the governor's race without a runoff. Of course, what happened with Mike Johnson up in D.C.
And he's going to be talking about that as we move along. Rise of the River District. That is number 3.
Yeah, it's an exciting one. They're going to build an entire neighborhood out of whole cloth. It would connect the Warehouse District to the Lower Garden District in that big vacant lot along the riverfront above the convention center. It's $1 billion, I'm sure it'll be more than that, economic development project. The first 2 anchor tenants, Shell, obviously, people were super excited when Shell said, we're not leaving us. They're not going to Houston or anywhere else. And then the Topgolf facility. They had a beautiful groundbreaking ceremony about a month ago, and immediately there was controversy about how quickly City Council voted.
There's a lot of excitement about that area. Okay, number 2.
Number 2, the Mid-Barrett Area Diversion Project. We've got we've created the levees to save the city from floods, and then of course the levees are contributing to the loss of all the coastline.
That and other factors,
Trying to open up some levee below the city to send that muddy water back into the Barrett Area region and build some land.
I was worried about fishing grounds and dolphins also.
The bottlenose dolphins.
Yeah, I know. It's a problem that we've got. Okay, the last one is definitely a problem that is quite pervasive.
Yeah, let's talk about existential crises. We got the fact that if you own a house here to try and get flood insurance or homeowners insurance and the taxes and everything else, it's crazy. So the legislature did a few things. I think a lot of people consider these Band-Aids. One was they basically paid some insurers to come back. They had a chunk of several $1 million to get some insurers to come back and write policies. The other side of it, which I think is a hopeful thing, they have grants up to $10,000 per homeowner to build your roof.
To fortify the roof.
Fortify the roof so the shingles don't peel off and everything doesn't get wet.
A lot of interest in that. Okay, so there was our 1 through 10 list.
Top 10.
Top 10. All right, you did it, Rich. Thanks a lot. Okay, Missy, now it's your turn. Your top 10 on crime.
All right, so my number 10 is jail woes amid the climbing population there. So stabbings, feces getting thrown, these are kind of facts of life in a jail. But we saw these things escalate, especially in September in the Orleans Justice Center. There were a number of fairly high-profile stabbings and fires, most notably, that culminated in, I think 4 deputies walking off the jail, basically. And they did return to their posts after conferring with their supervisors, but they were just in really dangerous conditions. I mean, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The population had been kind of steadily ticking up in the jail. It's got a cap of $12.50 imposed by City Council. So they were hovering just under that around September when all these things were happening. But it's been going up since, COVID, it was around 900. And so that coupled with a understaffed OPSO could contribute to some of these pretty gnarly incidents.
How's the staffing looking right now? Is she building up on that at all?
I need to look and see. I need an update. I believe it's notching in the right direction, though.
She's definitely seeking more money for it, and wage increases for the staff too.
Yeah, they got an $18 an hour
increase,
salary now.
yeah,
So
right.
it's still, I think, not enough for the job they do, which is incredibly hard.
Need an increase. Okay,
Yeah.
number 9.
Fricke teens convicted. So I think that everybody remembers Linda Fricke's incredibly tragic carjacking in March 2022. The 4 teens associated with that incident were convicted of murder and manslaughter. Murder for John Honore, the 18-year-old male who allegedly was kind of the ringleader. He was the one who basically confessed to macing Linda Fricke, dragging her from the vehicle, severing her arm and leaving her there to die. It was just a crime that kind of became emblematic of just the egregious nature of the crime surge and where we were as a city in 2022, which was such just like a kind of horrible year.
And these teens tried as adults.
They were.
Charged
They
as
were.
adults.
In a reversal of Jason Williams' campaign promises, he did try them as adults, and they have been sentenced. I think Honore has a life sentence, but he's eligible for parole after 25 years. And the other 3 girls, they got manslaughter, so I think they're looking at like 20 years.
All right. Real tragic case. Number 8.
Number 8. Oh yeah, this is kind of on the good side, well, on the bad side.
Right.
So on the good side, carjackings really plummeted this year. It looks like we're down about 44% as of today with carjackings compared to this time last year, which is awesome.
That is good news, yes.
It's really good news. You don't want to be carjacked. But the bad news is auto thefts are up about 77%.
That's considerable.
Yes.
So people are just going to steal cars with no one in them versus somebody in them. That's
Right, which seems to be far less traumatic and damaging, just as opposed to the alternative, which we just discussed how really bad that can go.
Right.
And the theories for these inversely proportional things are kind of out there, but I think that a lot of people just say, well, it's easier to snatch a car because of these Kia Hyundai challenges.
Is it the Kia thing? That's what I wanted,
I think that people are thinking, well, these car thieves are just being practical. It's much easier to just snatch a car that's empty rather than go through the whole carjacking.
And maybe just ride it along for a few blocks or something, but that's definitely a problem that I know the new police chief wants to tackle. Okay, number 7.
Yeah, domestic violence calls surge. So this was also another troubling violent crime trend that we saw around March and April. We saw murders of women spike in like April, May. So about like 9 women were killed in that 6-week span this spring, and 3 of those, at least 3, were domestic violence related. And during that same time, there was just this huge increase of 911 calls reporting domestic violence in like May and June. And so it was just some of these murders were really alarming, like women murdered literally holding their babies. Young nursing students, young nursing graduate students just gunned down. It was really
tragic
awful.
and heartbreaking. We have to move along. Number 6.
Number 6, Mandina's murder. That was another really high profile, just kind of a downer going through these. But the alleged shooter in this, Kyron Fazandi, basically ran up on people dining outside of Mandina's. A waiter and he murdered that waiter allegedly, and a stray bullet went into Mandina's and struck a Chicago tourist who was sitting there. He then fled to Texas, and while he was camped out in Texas, hiding in some Houston area apartment, he allegedly killed a 15-year-old boy.
And but he is apprehended and charged and in custody. There was supposedly a second shooter. There was a second shooter.
Yeah, there's another second shooter that's caught on camera. You can see that second shooter in the security tape. I'm not sure what's happening with that, but Fazand is awaiting trial, and he actually entered a not guilty plea.
Okay, all right, moving along. Spike in homicides.
Okay, that's another troubling thing. So this year so far, we've had at least 27 children be murdered. And that's not just homicides, that's like an actual murder, like not justifiable. And that is an increase from last year. Last year we had 22. So it's a really troubling surge. And last year in itself was like a record at the time, and now we've exceeded that record for juvenile deaths.
Definitely troubling. Okay, as we move along, 3 children murdered in a deadly fire. Just horrific.
Yeah, that was truly horrific, and they're also like chipping in toward that total. But in the 4900 block of America Street, a father allegedly set the house on fire with his 3 children inside, and then fled the scene and left them to die in that fire. 2 boys and a girl,
And the mother had called seeking help, and it just didn't arrive.
Yeah, because he called and told her, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And she wasn't able to return to the
Horrific.
scene. It was
Horrific
just gutting.
case.
Yeah, for the whole neighborhood especially.
Okay, number 3, NOPD consent decree.
So this is kind of an ongoing issue. You know, the city had kind of moved to exit, but then with this whole Officer Vappy investigation, basically, that appeared to violate, and federal judge Susie Morgan argued that ruled that it did indeed violate the consent decree.
And that's a concern of our governor-elect, too, who would like to see that consent decree go away. We have to move along now, and we have a new police chief, new police superintendent in New Orleans.
Yes, and we have her to thank for avoiding discipline in the area where they did violate the consent decree. Ann Kirkpatrick has crafted kind of a plan to usher NOPD into the sustainment period of exiting federal oversight. She's got decades of experience as a chief, and about 40 years as a police officer, came here via Oakland Police Department, and has really been making the rounds.
Okie doke. And number 1.
That's the best story. Violent crimes have gone down so much compared to last year. We're looking at about a 25% decline in homicides and about 20% across all categories of violent crime in New Orleans, amid a national decline.
Okay, there's Missy's 1 to 10 list in crime, and we should say that's all relative to the city of New Orleans, too, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, E, over to you. Your time.
Okay,
Politics.
we start off with number 8, and just, this was an election year, and whenever you have a statewide election year, you also have parish elections going on, too. And that's kind of like a breeding ground for future state officials. And so there was nothing really extraordinary that happened, but I did realize that the number 1 cause of people moving out of parish office is term limitations. It's not so much people being defeated, but it's just term limitations. It's happened in St. Bernard Parish. Guy McGinnis, who was parish president for 2 terms, he was limited, and someone named Lewis Pomes was elected. So that's pretty much how the process goes on. In Jefferson Parish, the incumbent was reelected easily, Cynthia Chang, and where you saw turnover in the council seats, it was because of a term-limited council member being challenged by someone else who was, term limited in the district, and so that's the real force in parish elections. Number 7, John Bell's farewell. John Bell Edwards is going out of office actually in a few days. I think he'll be remembered well, and what makes you think about this is there's been a lot of articles about him and tributes to him, and there's been nothing that said, but there was this scandal or anything like that. There was this that was mishandled. So I think it is far different from 8 years ago when Bobby Jindal was leaving. Everybody was saying, boy, what a bad guy this guy was. He really broke the state. And so I think he goes out fairly well respected. It shows more talent than some people at the national level, by the way, that we saw.
Number 6.
Number 6, the controversy about a congressional district, a black majority congressional district, which would be a second, it still goes on. Still not resolved, but the new governor has said that he's going to have a session that's going to deal with that. Number 5, and this is the fact that this makes Rich's list and my list, just shows, I have hard time for Democrats. He has good time for Republicans, and that tells us story. But like the Republicans have a supermajority in the legislature, they have all of the statewide offices, and so that just shows the change. There was a time when every office was Democrat.
Right.
Number 3.
Number 4.
Number 4. Cantrell and the council. Man, you could just count the issues that they have between the travel and the Pentalba and the.
That has been kind of acrimonious.
What?
It has been sort of acrimonious between them, that's for sure.
And perhaps justifiably so. I mean, the staff person who the council, they found an obscure rule saying, you can kick somebody off of a mayor's appointment. So it's one thing after the other. And the fact, you mentioned the new police chief. The council had passed that law saying, look, we got to approve this thing too. And I think it put a pressure on Cantrell to really look hard for a police chief, because she could have, under the old laws, just picked anybody she wanted to, And so I think that helped really improve the process. Number 3, Scalise comes close. This is when there was a vacancy in the Speaker of the House seat, and for a few days, Steve Scalise had it. And then it just kind of fell through, including in the Louisiana congressional delegation. There were a few people that just didn't go along with him. The surprise, though, was number 2, which I have listed as who is Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson's a legislator from upstate, from the Shreveport area. He's had a good reputation. People who follow politics talked about him. He looked like a rising star no one knew his store would rise that fast. Okay, and he came in. It was a big surprise, and so finally, for the first time, Louisiana has a Speaker of the House, and then number one, of course, Jeff Landry's landslide. People, it was evident he was going to win. I think throughout the whole campaign, it wasn't evident that he was going to win in the primary. And I think some of the key moments were early in the campaign when the whole Republican Party apparatus endorsed him. That scared a lot of people away. I think his decision not to do debates, a lot of people are critical of it, but why, if you're a front runner, why do you need to do a debate to give attention to your opponents and to give your opponents a chance to criticize you? And so there was no point. I mean, it looks undemocratic, but I think
it didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt him. Like you said, he won in a landslide outright.
Yeah, and I think it helped him. So.
Okay. All righty, guys, all good list. Now we're going to go over to Blake and find out what's cooking over at Gretna.
Yeah, I mean, Gretna is there are a number of municipalities in Jefferson Parish. Gretna doesn't get as much attention as Kenner, but it is the seat of Jefferson Parish government. Lately we've been seeing a lot of government-funded real estate developments there, and that's something I've been following. Mm-hmm. So recently, the city entered into a purchase agreement to acquire an abandoned Holiday Inn on the West Bank Expressway. This is a 300-room, sort of massive motel-looking hotel with doors on the outside. Mm-hmm. And it's been sitting there abandoned for basically a decade, built during the oil boom, and then kind of since then has been sort of couldn't fill its rooms. Mm-hmm. So the city shelled out $5.3 million, or is planning to purchase it, and we'll see what they do. Maybe bulldoze it and build a development there. But
what could it possibly be? Are there any ideas that are out there?
The mayor says that they're really in the early stages of figuring this out. They just wanted to get that thing leveled.
Because it's not only been an eyesore, it's also just attracted crime.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of homeless people will sort of live there, or so the mayor says. Mm-hmm. They sort of, and they have arrests there every so often. And interestingly, it's about less than a mile away from another sort of hotel problem in Gretna that's emerged recently, and this is the Oasis Motel, which is a sort of a mid-century modern-looking motel. It was the scene of Dallas Buyers Club, a Oscar-winning movie, and it's had the most 911 phone calls in Gretna in recent years. In the last year, or in the last sort of 20 months leading up to October, there were 5 overdose deaths and 160 calls. And so the city council is really, putting them on notice that they need to clean up their act.
So they give them a little bit more time, but they basically, like you said, they're on notice to clean up their act.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some other projects now that are coming up.
So some other interesting. These are parish-funded projects. So Gretna's a municipality, but it's still gets funding from the parish, and this primarily comes from these slush funds that these district council members have. So Marion Edwards, former judge, now council member, who represents the area, he is hoping to invest $8 million to build a brew pub on what is now a parking lot downtown. It's a parish-owned parking lot in downtown Gretna, and they're hoping that the parish will build this brew pub. They will be the owner of this building, and they're going to plan to lease it out to Port Orleans Brewing.
Well, it's right there in the Justice Center also for Gretna, right? Well, for the parish. The courthouse is right near this area, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's right next to the courthouse.
In Old Gretna, yeah.
Yeah, in Old Gretna, and there's still there's some sort of political controversy about this, and we'll see with this new council if this project moves forward as the Gretna Politico's hopes it will. But
it's great real estate down there.
That is
near
true.
The river, too. Yeah, it really is kind of nice. And so there's another building also.
And then one other sort of project that Marion Edwards is planning to put money into, and this is a 113-year-old building a few blocks away. It was the first schoolhouse in Gretna, and they're going to put about $3 million into converting this old schoolhouse into a co-working space. So another example of sort of the parish government being sort of the landlord for this, private development, private,
Are there examples of that in other cities? I'm trying to think.
It's really interesting. This popped up like quite a bit in the past few months, and I'm trying to figure it out. So we're going to dig into it a little bit.
Take a look at how it works. Okay, and speaking of Jefferson Parish, they approved their budget. Council did.
Yeah, that's right. At their last meeting earlier this month, they approved it. And sort of unlike New Orleans, you may see they have dozens of meetings where all the departments come for the city council, and they talk about how much money they need from the general fund. And it's this whole jockeying between the mayor and city council. Jefferson Parish 85% of the budget is already dedicated from the get-go. And then of the 15% general fund, 40% of that is restricted anyway. So there's very little money for them to fight over and how to divvy up. So it passed with Cynthia Lee Shang, the parish president. Her budget proposal passed with no revisions, no discussion.
So there's not a series of prolonged budget meetings or anything like that, because
No.
everything's sort of predetermined.
Which I sort of wish there were. It'd be nice to sort of get an inside look into sort of how all these departments work. But
still, as you mentioned, the council members do have their, quote, slush fund to give out to various projects, right?
yeah, anywhere from, depending on where they represent and whether they're at-large or district council member, they have anywhere from $1 million to some in this last term at around $30 million to essentially divvy up how they see fit. There are some restrictions. But yeah, this is really they can really choose the pet projects they want to spend it on, and really they don't have much oversight from their colleagues. If it's in your district and you want to put it there, you can put it there. So
There has to be some oversight to some degree, is there?
I mean, there's sort of an unspoken agreement that you do what you want with your money, I'll do what I want with my money. Of course, during the election season, there was a little more, getting into people's business. But, we'll see in the new year if people, keep that up.
Okay, news from Jefferson and Gretna. Very good. Thanks a lot. Other stories, E.
Okay, I'm going to start this off with an attribution quote that no journalist can use in any other city, and that is, according to our local voodoo priest, okay, that being Sally Ann Glassman, there's going to be a new national voodoo festival coming up in January. But it's a festival with a purpose. They're going to put a lot of emphasis on the slavery, the slave heritage. They're going to have tours of some of the key areas. They also deal with a lot of the prayers and rituals during the slave period. It's patterned after a festival in Benin in Africa. And they're going to start here and hope to make it an annual event.
Interesting. All right, moving along. Missy, real quick.
So I'm doing a follow on. Do you remember there was a SWAT roll at the Falstaff Apartments earlier this month? There was a standoff with police for about 8 hours. Well, apparently the subject in that standoff, after being booked with a bunch of drugs on his person and getting charged with that, got rebooked while he was in jail about a week later because he was having crack in jail with the intent to distribute. And I'm just like, how did you get that?
How was that done?
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's my question I'm trying to answer right now.
Okay.
Got some thoughts, but
Rich, over to you.
Well, I'm deep into beer right now. After the Fallberg story, I ended up, I just started talking to every brewer in the state for this story coming up. And so I just, right now, beer in general, nationally, the sales are down because of competition from like those R2D drinks, like the non-beer type canned drinks. So anyway, it's interesting times for Louisiana brewers.
Okay, Rich and his beer. All right, Blake.
Yeah, I had a story published last week about the largest Palestinian community in the state of Louisiana is on the west bank of Jefferson Parish. And of course, with the war between Israel and Hamas right now, there's a lot of emotions around that. So yeah, go check out that story if you want to learn more about that community.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Very interesting. Thank you guys for watching. Merry Christmas to you all. Have a very happy holiday, and we will see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.